James Lovelock, English scientist and environmentalist, most well known for the Gaia hypothesis, the skinny of this being that organic and inorganic form a synergy which keeps the conditions of this planet necessary to maintain life. Mr. Lovelock is possibly regarded as one of the most influential environmentalists of the 20th century, and he's still ticking at 99 years young. He'll be 100 this year, actually. Speaking fairly recently, he said, quote, "There is a real danger of losing our tenure on this planet altogether." So, he's repeated this a few times before. If we don't get to grips with climate change and take real action, quote, "no life of our kind will be possible," unquote. By that I take it to mean macroscopic life, complex organisms, are done for in a worst-case scenario runaway positive feedback mass extinction event. Arguably, we are already in a mass extinction event, but climate change isn't as yet the main driver. It's loss of habitat and pollution, overzealous resource extraction, hyperconsumption, and general across-the-board massively irresponsible and wasteful behaviour. James Lovelock is of the view that a tech answer to global warming, a techie solution, isn't the way to go. And we should be changing people's minds through the right kind of politics and trying to instill in people a greater understanding of the natural world, which I pretty much agree with. However, I'm not convinced by the Gaia hypothesis. I'm not a scientist, as you probably could have guessed from my giving you the skinny of the Gaia hypothesis. So you can consider that I'm by no means an expert in environmental or planetary science, take that. But I have read many of the words of the detractors of this hypothesis, who tend to point out that the propositions of this don't really hold up to scrutiny. There is an interesting debate around this subject which has been going on for quite a long time, and yeah, it's worth listening to. I remember reading The Revenge of Gaia, I think it was called, which was published back in 2006. Scary stuff. Lovelock has been labelled a gloom or doom monger by some. I do like James, though, in a way. He's an easy listen and an easy read, which not all scientists are. He's able to explain complex ideas in ways which reach a layperson like myself, which I appreciate. But he does say some scary things sometimes. Such as what, you may well ask? How about some examples? Okay, fair enough. Quote, "Even the best democracies agree that when a major war approaches, democracy must be put on hold for the time being. I have a feeling that climate change may be an issue as severe as a war. It may be necessary to put democracy on hold for a while." Unquote. Even if we say that the possible effects of climate change are more far-reaching and more devastating than any single conflict in human history, assuming that, still, what is to be gained by suspending democracies in a global emergency, which could span the course of centuries or longer? We simply don't know. What do we have to gain? Well, dictators and authoritarian governments could gain a lot from an arrangement where a state of permanent planetary emergency is put in place. Democracy being put on hold could be its death, quite easily if certain types of people get their hands on the levers of power. Another quote: "This program to stop nuclear by 2020 is just crazy. If there were a nuclear war and humanity were wiped out, the Earth would breathe a sigh of relief." Unquote. Yeah. Like Lovelock, I'm not opposed to nuclear power, nuclear energy, but the viewpoint that the Earth would be better off with no humans on it, radiation, not a massive problem for the Earth, even full-scale thermonuclear war, this view veers close to the idea that the world might need to be cleansed of humans, and the nuclear option is not something we should take off the table. Now, I don't think Mr. Lovelock actually wants this. He seems like a pretty humane fellow. But the way he talks sometimes does betray a religious component or dimension to the way he thinks. And maybe sometimes he's excited by the prospect of disaster and crisis, which one imagines is a product of his life experiences.